This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell. Joining me today are the Toledo Symphony's principal second violin and artistic administrator, Merwin Sue. We also have the TSO's marketing director, Felicia Canny, and a very special guest has joined us on the phone, and that is David Brighton. Welcome, David.
Well, hello. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Where are you right now? You're out on the West Coast, right?
Yes, I'm based in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. David Brighton is bringing the music of rock legend David Bowie to the Stranahan, along with the Toledo Symphony, and that is happening this Saturday evening. It is on April 14th at 8 o'clock p.m. at the Stranahan Theater. We're going to talk with David all about this presentation, which is really exciting. First of all, I took a quick little poll before we got on the phone with you, David, and we're all terrified because we're not David Bowie aficionados here. So if we say anything or make any missteps as far as the Bowie experience goes, please feel free to correct us or to set us straight.
I really tried to convince my wife to come on to the podcast, who basically had trained her son at the age of 6 to play the guitar solo from Ziggy Stardust. So,
really?
Yes. I'm not sure how good a job he did, but he tried really hard, and it was very cute on home video.
Yeah.
But got to see that. That's awesome.
That's a different kind of David Bowie tribute right there.
Yes.
So, I mean, we've heard of Elvis impersonators or what have you. I'm wondering, what's the path to become a David Bowie impersonator? First of all, you have to look like him, which you do, very much so.
I think the path is a good dose of insanity. I joke. Boy, this could take 29 minutes just to tell you that. I started out as a career guitar player, playing guitar for people, touring recording artists, and found that one could have, months of working and then some months off, depending on who was touring and who wasn't touring and so forth. And I somehow found my way portraying George Harrison with some of the original cast members from the original Broadway cast of Beatlemania that had been popular in the late 70s and early 80s. And I came into this in the 90s, much later. And I started portraying George Harrison for about 5 years, touring the world with this Beatles production. And they took us to a show called Legends in Concert in Las Vegas, and they'd have an Elvis and a Madonna and a Michael Jackson and so forth. They had a character for every major icon. And I was just watching and enjoying, and I said, they don't have a David Bowie, and I'd always been a big David Bowie fan. So after I'd been touring for a number of years as George Harrison, I thought, might be fun to put together a David Bowie show using the knowledge I've learned from these Beatles productions I'd been in. So around the year 2000, I started putting that together with a lot of incredible musicians in the L.A. area. I knew a lot of people who'd been doing what I'd doing, being a sideman. And so I grabbed the bass player from Eddie Money and one of the guitar players had played with Berlin and Gene Loves Jezebel and Nancy Sinatra and so on, drummers that played with the Doors and Jeff Beck and et cetera, who all loved Bowie, and we put this act together, and we've been working very hard ever since.
Now, don't you have to do some kind of legal wrangling to portray, a living person on the stage, which he was at the time?
There are laws that one must adhere to. You're not... I found that out very early. I met with David Bowie's keyboard player, who was very gracious and actually gave me some of the transcriptions for his very difficult keyboard playing for me to pass along to our piano player. And he said, just make sure you don't say you're David Bowie. Because if you're playing in South America somewhere and you say you're David Bowie, then you're going to get in trouble. But playing the music, wearing the costumes, is fully legal, and as long as the royalties are paid, under the right circumstances and all of that. But we are very respectful. This is and we have no desire, to do anything that is not above boards.
Well, you can call yourself David B, or you can say, I'm David Brighton, right? And see what kind of what kind of an effect that makes. Well, it's really interesting. I mean, David Bowie is somebody who went through lots of different, lots of different stages in his career and different personae. And I'm wondering, how do you approach that? I mean, what was your first iteration of David Bowie? Were you Ziggy Stardust? Were you, a little bit later on?
Well, the very first time we did the show, and we modeled this after Beatlemania, because the Beatles went through various stages as well. And so I learned from the Beatle groups I worked with, where to put costume changes. And we started out the show with about 3 different costumes, where I'd start out the show in the Ziggy Stardust era, and we'd transition into what I would call the Fame era, where he's wearing the black vest and the white shirt, and then we'd transition into the Let's Dance look. And currently, it all matters on. It depends on how much time there is, because I usually do the costume changes either during a video or during instrumental sections. So I'll do anywhere from 2 costumes and 2 more, just depending on how much room there is.
Yeah. I want to play just a little clip, if you don't mind, from your YouTube channel.
Please.
And so people can just get a sense of what it is that you do. I mean, if you go to YouTube and look up David Brighton and look at his videos, I mean, the resemblance is uncanny, and the way that you move and the way that you carry yourself on the stage. But this is what it sounds like. One of the things that I love is that you sound authentically like somebody who has a British accent doing an American accent. Do you know what I'm saying?
There's a funny story there. Thank you, I guess. What does one say to that?
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I meant it as a compliment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know, I'm just joking. We, I grew up on English rock. I grew up listening to the Beatles and the Who and Stones and Bowie and all of that. And when I was in originals bands and we were making our own records and not making enough money to live on, the critics, I used to get criticized by saying, this sounds like an American who's trying to sound like an Englishman who's trying to sound like an American. In other words, that
so you hit a nerve, Brad. Good job.
Even when I tried not to sound English, there was just sort of there was just so much English influence, and you said it differently, of course, but I mean, there was.
Well, what I was getting at is that you had some of the sort of the inflection of his voice modeled very well. You could hear that, and the tune and the way that he pronounces some of the words, I thought was spot on.
Yeah. We worked very hard on that, and since I grew up on that wasn't too difficult. But what was difficult when I was doing original music was getting that out. And people, like the record companies, used to say, "You sound too much like David Bowie," and And when we made a record, somebody said, a critic said, it sounds too much like David Bowie. So that was one of the reasons that when I'd been doing the Beatles thing, and that's one of the reasons I thought about trying a Bowie thing, because it's a complaint I always got. Dude, you sound too much like David Bowie, and I try not to, so.
Okay, well.
You sound like a guy who sounds like he's trying not to sound like him. Knock it up. So, and then the visuals, hiring somebody to help me with wigs and makeup and so forth helped complete that as well.
Well, I can just say that, you sound nothing like David Bowie right now on the phone. So
Right. And I wouldn't look like him if you saw me at this moment. But the basic bone structure is the same, of course. But, they're putting on the right wig, because we have wigs that are exact duplicates of those different haircuts. And it's crazy how much, putting on a wig changes your appearance. It's really strange. But
well, what is the reaction? What do you get? Reaction from audiences? I mean, do you think they're looking at you and they're into it and they're just letting themselves be swept up in the fantasy that, we're watching David Bowie? I mean, first of all, tell us a little bit about how the audience, treats you, and then maybe if there are any saucy, spicy stories out there about audience interaction, I want to hear about it.
Okay, great questions. Well, the goal is to take people back in time and to get the illusion across. That's my goal. It's not. We don't want to, be a bar band playing David Bowie songs. We want people to actually feel like they are there. Mm-hmm. So, I do put on the character. The musicians put on the characters of the Bowie musicians, and there are some Bowie fans. Bowie's got a really intelligent audience, first of all, and there are some people that will sit there with their arms folded and go, "Let's see, this guy thinks he can imitate David Bowie. We're going to rip him to shreds." And I've had them come up to me after the shows and just think, "We were ready, to strangle you or hang you, but after, and then we saw the show, and can we buy you an ice cream cone?"
Really, an ice cream cone.
I'm kidding, but what I mean is like they were not disappointed and they were very happy, and so we run into the tough sells occasionally, but the basic, and this happened with David Bowie's own people. It's like we were contacted by David Bowie's webmaster, his official webmaster, early on, saying, we see that you're really making the effort here, and we want to, support you guys, and they started posting our gigs, and eventually I even had the opportunity to work with David Bowie himself doing a television commercial. So they were always very supportive, and again, they realized and appreciated the fact how much effort we were putting into this. And that's where the insanity comes in. A normal person, why would you take this much effort? But, we were passionate about it. We love the music, and we love the show, and it is incredibly fun. So I think the audience enters into that, and they appreciate it. Okay, you can't ever be someone else. You're never going to look exactly or sound like somebody else. But people, I think, appreciate the effort that's gone into it and the hard work and the dollars.
Did you draw? Was it a different sort of audience from when you were George Harrison?
Slightly different. I mean, it's still an English music-loving audience. A lot of Americans and Canadian and people all over the world, grew up on the British invasion. However, it's slightly different because, like I said, Bowie's music and lyrics are really sophisticated and really varied. He's played every style of music under the sun, and actually the Beatles did that too, and they paved the way for him to do it. But it's slightly different. He also has gone out on a lot of limbs, and so he attracts a very eclectic audience, all kinds of different people, because he's had a glam era and an industrial era and a dance and a pop era and an experimental music era. He's covered so many bases that he's got an enormous audience that's very diverse. So I probably talked for 89 minutes just now.
No, we still got some more time to go.
Well, I was wondering, we were talking a bit about kind of like the feel with the audience. Did you maybe notice a change kind of after 2016?
Huge.
All of a sudden, does it almost become almost like a celebration of a life? Is there just a completely different feeling in the hall?
I imagine some fans felt even more, like the pressure was on even more for you, I guess, to satisfy. Yeah. That's
both things you both said were very, very descriptive of what actually is, because the pressure is on, and yes, initially, we did a show the same week that the news came out.
Oh, wow.
And people were just bawling, and then by the end of the night, everyone's holding hands and arms around each other, celebrating, and so very healing, cathartic situation, and it's very emotional, very, very emotional. So it is a community of people who this music means an incredible amount to, who come together and heal together and celebrate together. And as you said, there was one review when we played in Canada where a gentleman was saying, "Okay, we're in the audience. This guy better be good again, or we're going to destroy him." And
nothing worse than a David Bowie mob, with the pitchforks and the torches.
His review was actually really well written, and I just remember reading the first few lines, going, "Oh no, this guy going to eat us for dinner?" But he's just saying, you got to be either really brave or really stupid to impersonate David Bowie, and that's how he started. And then by the end of it, he's being very, very, very supportive and complimentary. So, again, another illustration of. So we have to, you can't make a mistake doing David Bowie. But anyway, he was great, and he wrote a great review. He just let us know in the beginning that it wasn't going to be an easy sell for him. So I transgressed there. Sorry about that.
Well, you mentioned how you came to this originally as a guitarist, and
yes.
One of the things that's amazing with David Bowie is he played everything. I mean, he played saxophone, he played viola, he played cello, he played all of these thumb harp. Are you? I mean, it's one of the
because when you come to the symphony now, all the classical fans are going to be like, I hope he plays the viola.
I really see. I kind of do. I feel like all of a sudden you have these extra instruments. I would love to hear David Bowie play the viola in concert.
He better pull out that thumb harp. If there's no thumb harp, I'm out of here.
But do you do anything besides sing and play guitar and on the concerts, or do you or was that something that kind of you decided to just kind of concentrate on the vocals?
Well, I'll tell you. I do what he did in concert, and that is a big enough challenge for any human who's not David Bowie.
Yes.
And because what he did play of various instruments in the studio. However, on stage, he occasionally would pick up a guitar, but he fronted his bands and was a consummate performer. And his array of performance skills was incredibly vast. And this is something I learned watching him when we did the commercial. Just watching him off camera doing all sorts of performance bits that none of us had ever seen him do before, things that he didn't do in his shows or didn't do in movies or commercials that he was in. This guy had a repertoire of performance skills that was beyond most people in rock music. So I have spent I don't know how many hours studying what he did on stage, his movements, his gestures, his mannerisms, and everything. And that's what, besides singing and so forth, that's what I do on stage, is what he did on stage. So I hope you're not disappointed about the instrumentation, because all that will be covered by your incredible orchestra and the incredible musicians. But he actually didn't do that on stage.
That's interesting.
How often have you performed the show with orchestra?
Not enough. We've only a few times, to be honest. We're just branching out into that now. And it is an incredible experience to hear it all performed live, because my band has been performing since the year 2000, and all of that is done with synthesizers, the orchestration. So it is an incredible experience having it done with actual live strings, horns, etc.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Beatles and then David Bowie sort of picking up that idea of symphonic rock music. I mean,
exactly.
The Beatles incorporated a lot of classical little riffs and things here and there into their music, and David Bowie's music even attracted, classical composers, people like Philip Glass, who wrote an entire symphony based on an album of David Bowie.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah.
And so there's something, I think, very symphonic about it, even though these are rock songs, but they are, as you say, sophisticated in their creation and in their employment. I know that the Toledo Symphony a couple of seasons ago, they did the Low Symphony.
No, we did Heroes.
Oh, Heroes Symphony. Yeah, sorry. I was confused.
And actually, Philip Glass is coming up with Lodger in maybe 2019. I think he's going to complete the trilogy.
Oh, okay.
So it's never been heard, but I think Low, Heroes, and Lodger will all be Philip Glass symphonies, as well as, iconic albums.
Wow.
Well, that is amazing. I'd love to hear that. Well, yes, Bowie's music was a mixture of classical, of pop, of rock, blues, dance music, everything. And he spent a lot of time listening to classical music, and there is a huge classical influence in his songwriting.
Did you have any classical influence on you growing up?
I grew up in a musical family, and I was surrounded by classical music and show music, rock music. I steered, once the Beatles came out, and any generation that came after the Beatles was of course influenced by that.
Yeah.
But yes, I heard classical music in the house from day one. I could bore you to tears with everything. Both my sisters were classical pianists, and one of my sisters is an opera singer. So yes,
really?
It was all around me. Yep.
Talk a little bit about, you've mentioned a couple of times that commercial you did with David Bowie. What was the commercial for?
They used it for Vittel mineral water, French mineral water, and they also used it for his reality CD that was just about to come out when they did the commercial.
What was your role in that?
What they did is they'd have David Bowie walking around from room to room in a house as he looked at the time, and then he'd see his different incarnations in each room. And I played all of the different looks. And what they would do to make it, on some of it, like in other words, I'd be Ziggy Stardust in one room, and I'd be the Thin White Duke in another room, and then I'd be the clown that from one of his videos in another. And on a couple of looks where you really saw the face, and they wanted to make sure no one could tell that it wasn't Bowie, they would, with computer graphics, they would superimpose the pupils from his eyes because they're both different.
Yeah. Oh, right.
He's got a permanently, or I'm sorry, I talk like he's still with us. In my mind, he still is.
Yeah.
But he had a dilated pupil, and they'd change my jawline a bit to look more like his, and so forth.
Well, his eyes were different colors, right?
Yeah, they were different. Yeah, one of his pupils was permanently dilated, and so it gave it an appearance that it was a different color. Mm. And that was my job, and talk about nerve-wracking. Having the person that you're, impersonating being there watching you, that was even more terrifying.
Did you interact with him at that point? Were you like
a tiny bit? He was, and he was a perfect English gentleman, and yes, he was great. And again, like I said, he and his camp were already aware of us. That's why I was there doing the job. Yeah. He's remarkable. I even found out during that shoot that he had a photographic memory. So it's just a remarkably talented human being.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you've spoken a lot about the different incarnations of David Bowie. Do you have a favorite one or a favorite costume?
Well, for me, what I call the Thin White Duke era is when he was wearing the black vest, black trousers, and the white shirt, and red and blonde streaked hair. For some reason, I really like that one. They're all good, and the crowd loves them all, but I really like that one. I don't know, for some reason, even though I would never dress like any of the things that he wore. That's just not how I dress, but I just really enjoy that one maybe the most, but they're all great.
Yeah.
Well, we're encouraging our audience members to come dressed up. And we've even had on social media a costume contest just to win a pair of tickets to the concert. And we've had some really wonderful costumes.
Good idea.
Oh, yeah. So look for
you
your
should enter the contest, David.
You should enter.
Am I allowed to?
Get a couple of tickets.
If I could get free tickets, that would be amazing. 'Cause then I could sit out in the audience and watch while I'm.
Yeah.
We did a couple shows on the East Coast that there were two people in the audience wearing exact replicas of one of the costumes, and I was watching, and they were really expensive replicas. They were really good because these costumes, each one costs $1,000 or $2,000 to get made. They're expensive, and I thought, wow, these people are dedicated.
They're serious. Yeah.
I was hired also to do a wedding, and the gentleman, the groom, I saw him a few hours before the wedding, and he was dressed in a suit and wearing, had long hair. And then at the wedding, he had a red Ziggy Stardust haircut, and it was as though he had his hair cut and dyed, and he was wearing a Ziggy Stardust outfit that was an exact replica of what Bowie wore on such and such a tour. And I thought, you did all that in a few hours? And anyway, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Now, tell the truth. Tell the truth. Have you ever been tempted, like even on Halloween, to go out to put on the whole regalia and go out into the world and just see what kind of reaction you get?
Humiliation. My daughter asked me to do that last year. I have a 13-year-old daughter. And I don't
Did you
remember
do
how
it?
I got out of it. I got out of it somehow. I think I had a gig come up or something.
You're like,
She also wanted me to come to her class and do a song for her class, in costume. And I haven't walked into 7-Eleven yet dressed like that. But we were doing a show somewhere, and it was we were dressed up in the glam era, and one of my guitar players had to go use the public restroom before the show in his glam outfit.
oh.
and he got in a large venue, and he got some looks by some people. But obviously they knew that the show was going on in the building.
Yeah.
But no, I have not yet. If you want me to, I'll go to the deli the day of the show and see what happens.
I still think you just need to enter that costume contest. It's Toledo Symphony at Twitter, right?
It's on Facebook.
I'll make you a deal.
Yeah.
If you guys all do it, I will do it.
Well, you have to supply the costumes.
Okay.
Let's think about that.
Yeah. We have a little
we have
dress
time?
up. This would be a great kind of peripheral, halftime show. People can come up and model costumes.
Actually, yes. Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Give us a sense of what we're going to see with the symphony. I mean, is it your normal set? Are you doing anything special with the symphonic, background? What's the arc of the show like for people who are not familiar?
Well, a great thing with this show and with the incredible Windborne Band is we get to do a lot of Bowie's orchestrated stuff that you might not normally see at a typical rock Bowie concert. And as I said, Bowie did a lot of classically based music. There's a song called Life on Mars. It's got incredible string parts. And Rock and Roll Suicide is another. And we delve in deeply into the catalog, into a lot of numbers like that. It's a very rounded set list. That, like I said, we were able to actually do live a lot of the music that normally wouldn't happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you go chronologically? Do you basically get almost that 40-year, 45-year arc, or do you?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
Not exactly. That was a decision we made early on. I think that you can build, and he did the same thing live. You can build the best show that has the best beginning, middle, and end when you don't go exactly chronologically.
Yeah. How lucky was it that your name is David?
Yeah.
Same initials. You could have, all of your David Bowie stuff monogrammed, and you could just wear it out in your day-to-day life.
It's a great idea.
Well, I will admit I did not have it planned. Again, when I started out in the music field, I had no intention of impersonating anyone. However, it's been amazing. It's been incredibly fun. And I get to play with some of the best musicians on the planet, and we'll get to do so in Toledo. So I look forward to playing with your amazing symphony.
David Brighton is bringing the magic and the music of the rock legend David Bowie. That's this weekend, happening Saturday evening at 8 o'clock p.m. at the Stranahan Theater. More information at ToledoSymphony.com. Or you can call up their box office. That is 419-246-8000. My thanks, of course, to David Brighton for joining us on the phone. Thanks also to Merwin Sue and to Felicia Canny. Toledo Symphony Lab is generously underwritten by a gift from the estate of Barbara Garwood and is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell. This has been Toledo Symphony Lab here on FM 91.